I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, tightening the belts. A San Diego tech giant bracing for job cuts, the extreme measures on the table as Qualcomm considers breaking up.
California women will be the first in the nation to get birth control pills without a prescription. I'm Peggy Pico. How prices, insurance coverage, and medical screenings could change. Then, a San Diego researcher may have found the key to fighting drug-resistant bacteria, how it works, and why there could be social implications for people.
Ready to sail? KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. They're all fired up. There's a San Diego conference attracting the movers and shakers in business and the Republican Party. It's also prompting protests from a coalition of groups that want to send a clear message today to the American Legislative Exchange Council.
No ALEC zone. I mean, we don't want ALEC here in our city or, quite frankly, in our state. This is California. We fight for workers' rights. We fight for affordable health care.
Republican presidential hopefuls, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee are among the speakers. KPBS reporter Jean Guerrero joins us live from the rally downtown.
Hundreds of protesters just marched in the direction of the Manchester Hyatt Hotel behind me, from here in Embarcadero Park. They've been here since around 3 o'clock this afternoon, chanting and listening to speakers, including labor rights leaders and California Assembly Speaker Tony Atkins and the co-founder of United Farm Workers, Dolores Huerta. Protesters held up signs calling ALEC anti-labor, anti-immigrant, anti-LGBT, anti-women's rights, and they called San Diego and California a no-ALEC zone. The annual ALEC conference unites lobbyists and legislators from across the U.S. to discuss public policy on national issues. Opponents here call the convention a bill mill, in which they say conservative lobbyists spoon-feed politicians ready-made legislation. They say they're motivated by corporate greed and want to increase profits at the expense of others. Protesters also say that ALEC is responsible for environmentally damaging legislation and hurting workers' rights. Various unions were here: the United Farm Workers, the California Nurses Association, UPS, immigrants' rights groups, and more. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
A massive drop in revenues and net income, two major factors behind widespread layoffs announced today by a tech giant in San Diego. It is the latest from Qualcomm and its quarterly earnings report out this afternoon. KPBS tech reporter David Wagner joins us with some details. David, how many Qualcomm workers are being laid off?
Well, Dwayne, thousands in San Diego stand to lose their jobs. Qualcomm CEO Steve Mollenkopf told investors the company plans to cut costs by more than $1 billion, in part by laying off workers and closing offices.
Full-time headcount in QCT will be reduced by approximately 15%, which is in alignment with the overall company reductions.
So that's a 15% cut at one of San Diego's largest non-government employers.
Now, did the company announce any other changes today, David?
Yes, they did indicate that they might be thinking about restructuring the company. 2 new board members have been appointed as part of a so-called strategic realignment plan, and those appointments were approved by investors who've been pushing to split up the company, separating Qualcomm's chip-making business from its patent licensing business.
And fill us in, what led to this downturn at Qualcomm?
Right. Qualcomm has faced a number of setbacks in recent months. Earlier this year, Samsung decided not to use a Qualcomm chip in its Galaxy smartphone. The company also recently paid nearly $1 billion to settle an antitrust investigation in China. And they face another antitrust challenge in Europe. That's all been reflecting in their stock price, which is down about 20% from this time last year.
KPBS tech reporter David Wagner. San Diego Daily Transcript is going out of business after nearly 130 years. The paper's website says the Transcript's no longer a viable business because of increasing overhead and healthcare costs. Along with an uncertain future for the news industry, the final issue of the transcript will roll off the presses September 1st. A new roadblock for San Diego and its plans to keep the Chargers in town. The environmental review for a new stadium is drawing some legal fire. An LA firm is challenging a step in developing the report for the Mission Valley site. San Diego is trying to fast-track the report to get a ballot measure before voters in January. The firm is demanding more information for other development at the site. It's challenged Speedy Review's efforts before on stadium proposals in other cities. A state of emergency in San Diego following an epic summer storm over the weekend. Nearly 130 San Diego home and business owners reported property damage due to pounding downpours from the tail end of Hurricane Dolores. Today, Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency in San Diego and 5 other counties. He cited the collapse of Interstate 10 and the washed-out bridge linking Coachella and the Arizona border. Minimum wage is going up at UC campuses, increasing gradually over the next 3 years and up to $15 an hour by fall 2017. Current pay is $9 an hour. The move affects over 3,000 hourly workers and contract employees for the state's 3rd largest employer. Now here's a look at what cities across the country are doing as it relates to the wage. LA County supervisors approved an increase to $15 an hour this week. In New York, a panel recommended raising wages for the city by 2018 and the state by 2021. Washington, D.C. cleared the way for a ballot initiative with gradual increases hitting $15 an hour by 2020. Birth control changes coming to California in October. Peggy Pico explains how the Golden State is leading the way for women's health.
Pharmacies in San Diego and throughout the state will soon sell birth control pills and patches directly to women without a prescription or doctor's visit. Joining me with how the shift could impact price and health screenings are my guests, KPBS medical correspondent Kenny Goldberg and Dr. Shira Varone, assistant clinical professor of reproductive medicine at UC San Diego. And Dr. Varone, what kind of birth control are we talking about that's going to be sold by pharmacists?
We're talking about hormonal contraceptives that have traditionally been available by prescription only.
So birth control pills,
patches, the ring, the patch.
Things like that. Are these the same products that were prescribed by doctors, or are they going to be different in any way?
They'll be the same products.
I say, so exactly the same. Now, Kenny, tell us about this new law, if you would walk us through it. What happens if a woman wants to go, come October, get these, let's say, birth control pills?
Well, they go to a pharmacy, and they'll have to get their blood pressure checked by the pharmacist. Then they'll have to take a health questionnaire. It's 20 questions designed to help them determine if they may be at risk for complications from birth control. And at that point, once they pass those 2 little tests, then they can go ahead and get the birth control, pay for it, and they're out of there.
And there's no age limit on this, correct?
No, there isn't, and that's consistent with California law, in which minors can access reproductive health services, abortions, be treated for sexually transmitted diseases without parental permission.
So, Dr. Varone, what are some of the medical pros for being able to get your birth control contraceptives over the counter?
Well, the number one benefit would be to decrease rates of unintended pregnancy. When patients are needing to come see their providers in order to refill their prescriptions or get new prescriptions, there's a potential barrier to access there. So in somebody who's already been on birth control pills, if they don't get back to see their doctor in time and they run out of their pills, they traditionally have to get back in to see the doctor, get a new prescription, and that could lead to them missing their doses and becoming pregnant.
What about the cons or maybe arguments against this that you've heard? Like, would it increase STDs, or maybe, you know, people won't go get the health screenings that they're supposed to get when they had to do it before to get a prescription?
Traditionally, that was the thought process that providers had, that if they didn't incentivize their patients to come in for their health care screening by making them get their prescription only if they came in for screening, then that would have them lose their patients.
And it didn't happen, though.
And that's not what we see when we've looked at studies.
Lots of research on that. Kenny, do we know if insurance is going to pay for over-the-counter birth control pills?
That's the million-dollar question. The California law doesn't address that. There are two competing measures in the Congress now. One would require insurance companies to pay for these contraceptives. The other would not. Currently, the Affordable Care Act does require insurance companies to pay for all prescription contraceptives, but because these will be available without a prescription, there's that gray area. And I was talking with Dr. Verone, and she was saying that because the medications are technically behind the counter, that pharmacists could still bill for them.
Oh, I see. I see. What about price, Kenny? Other medications have gone over the counter. I'm thinking allergy medicines and things like that. Do you think this will result in a price drop?
If it follows the trend of other drugs, certainly they will. For example, when Prilosec and other these antacid drugs and heartburn drugs were put over the counter, the price did drop pretty precipitously. And I think if it follows those trends, they will drop.
And Dr. Verone, what would you recommend to, let's say, an 18-year-old woman or a woman of any age, really, who wants to get their hormonal birth control through a pharmacist? Do you have certain recommendations? Should they see a doctor first?
I would say that ideally patients should still seek care from a healthcare provider, from their OBGYN or their primary care doctor prior to starting birth control pills if possible. But if they don't have access to that, then they need to be thorough and make sure that they answer their screening questionnaires at the pharmacy correctly so that they can know if they have any contraindications to using birth control pills.
Okay, and just to be clear, this isn't for other birth control like IUDs or things like that, correct?
Right.
It's
those
just
devices,
for...
right? Those devices need to be placed by a physician in the office, so those are not going to be available.
Okay, and Kenny, we'll have to wrap on this. What kind of impact do you think this could have on public health here in San Diego County? I'm thinking, didn't we recently see a surge in syphilis and things like that?
We did, but there's a new survey from the CDC that indicates, at least among young people, their contraceptive use is pretty high. So I don't think this will affect that so much, and it's designed to give greater access to birth control. So I think that's the main goal of it.
All right, Dr. Verone and KPBS's Kenny Goldberg, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Calexico City's council backed away from a discussion over whether to keep its interim police chief and entire police department. Now, last night, the council tabled discussions over Chief Michael Bostic's contract and a proposal to contract police work to the Imperial Valley Sheriff's Department. The FBI is investigating Calexico PD after accusations of abuse and corruption by police union members. Here in San Diego, Councilwoman Myrtle Cole represents some of the city's lower-income neighborhoods. She's working to build trust between her constituents and police and to bring more business to her district. KPBS reporter Claire Trageser brings us this profile.
Historian in the house. This was not on my bucket list to do. I did not say, okay, I'm going to be a city council member, and so this was not it. But I did not see anyone that had the passion and had the know-how and the determination to get things done.
Myrtle Cole won the City Council District 4 seat in a special election in 2013. She then easily won re-election the next year. Cole says not everyone was confident she could lead. She is the first African-American woman elected to the City Council and the first woman to represent her district.
Myrtle Cole, the candidate for Council District 4?
It includes the Oak Park, Emerald Hills, and Encanto neighborhoods.
A lot of leaders just did not want to see a female in this position, but now I think we've resolved that. They see that I know what I'm doing. I'm passionate about what I'm doing.
She didn't want to say who questioned her, but says her accomplishments have silenced her critics. She's most proud of bringing a Walgreens to her district.
That's the first drugstore, major drugstore south of the 94. How do you not have a drugstore in a community?
And installing sidewalks near Lincoln High School. She's now working to bring more businesses to her neighborhoods, including restaurants and another grocery store.
People don't want to develop in our district, but now they know our spending power, because that was a myth that we didn't spend money. Oh, no, no, no. District 4 spends money.
Half of Cole's constituents make less than $57,000 a year. 43% are Hispanic, 17% are black, and 11% are white, according to 2014 estimates. Cole campaigned on expanding the redevelopment agency's Civic San Diego into her district. She still supports that idea, even though Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez proposed a bill to limit its power. Gonzalez and labor unions helped Cole get elected, but she is willing to stand apart from them on this issue.
Ms. Gonzalez is going to do what she needs to do. I'm going to do what I need to do and make sure that economic development happens in my district with Civic San Diego.
This past year also brought up tough questions about racial profiling. After police in New York City and Ferguson, Missouri killed unarmed black men, protests erupted on San Diego's streets. Cole says her staff marched, but she viewed her job as something else.
The best thing that I could do is meet with the chief.
Cole talked with Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman about how to avoid police violence against her constituents.
I met with her to make sure, to let her know my feelings, to let her know that we need more trust building, relationship building with the police department, so that won't happen. That's what my job is to do, is to make sure that that does not happen.
Cole worked as a police officer in Tucson, Arizona, and for the San Diego Community College District. She says police shootings in other parts of the country angered her, so she went to a meeting at Bethel Memorial AME Church.
We had a prayer vigil, and I had to make sure that I went to that prayer vigil so that I could get this anger out, because it angered me that innocent lives were taken and that the police officers did it, because former police officers, that should not happen.
Cole can run one more time in her district in 2018. After that, she says she's done with politics.
I'm going to get my dog and we're going to ride off in the sunset.
Cole has a 13-year-old Pomeranian Yorkie mix named Summer. Until Cole's term is finished, she has a simple mission for her district.
I was told before I became a city council member that, Myrtle, in order for me to support you, I need you to promise me that you will make sure that you leave this district better than you found it. That's what I'm going to do. Those are the things that I like about this job, that I'm going to be leaving this district so much better than I found it.
Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
For more profiles of city council members, go to kpbs.org/citycouncil. California's Department of Education is giving San Diego schools a $13 million grant. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler says the money will be used to help schools get students ready for the jobs of the future.
15 San Diego school districts and 5 community college districts are going to use the grant to create a single centralized system to help make sure students are ready for jobs in advanced manufacturing, clean energy, and information technology. San Diego Office of Education Superintendent Randolph Ward says he wants to start as soon as possible.
It must be within this year. We have to move. Our generation can't wait.
San Diego Unified Superintendent Cindy Martin says while working with the County Office of Education, her district and the 14 other districts involved will be fundamentally changing education.
But what San Diego Unified and the school districts need to do is completely redesign what the high school experience is.
San Diego Unified's share of the grant will be more than $2.3 million. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
Can't we all just get along? The ability to resolve conflict among individual cells helps bacteria colonies thrive. That's the word from researchers at UC San Diego. Peggy Pico finds out what the discovery for new drugs means.
Bacteria don't have brains or nervous systems, but they quickly adapt to outside threats, which can lead to drug tolerance, resistance, and sometimes untreatable infections. Scientists didn't know exactly how bacteria colonies, like the one you see on your screen, adapted so quickly to external threats. But now they do, thanks to new research findings by a team of researchers at UC San Diego, led by my guest, Gural Suel, Associate Professor of Molecular Biology, and also joining us with the potential implications for drugs and society at large is biology professor Stanley Malloy, SDSU Dean of the College of Sciences. And Gural, in layman's terms, exactly how does bacteria work as a social group for survival?
So it's a beautiful question and surprising answer. So it turns out that when bacteria grow, they grow into a community, and by the very fact that they're growing into a community, some cells find themselves in different places within this community. Some are on the outside, some on the inside, and that creates differences, and it creates some kind of social interactions.
Well, let's take a look at that. We actually have video of these bacteria growing. Is that what biofilm is? Is that what we're looking at here?
Yes, you're looking at a biofilm, and what you're looking at is the growth, the expansion of one of these communities, so the bacteria growing, but what's puzzling is periodically they stop growing.
And why?
So it turns out that there's a social conflict, and the social conflict is in the form that the outer cells protect the cells on the interior from attack, because attack comes from the outside, but the interior cells need the outer cells to once in a while stop eating all the food so they can get some food for themselves. And they can withdraw a molecule from the outer cells, and that stops the growth on the outer cells, which allows some food to finally trickle in so that interior cells, which are the protected cells, don't die. Because what good is it protecting cells that are dying?
Right, so the inside is sort of reeling them in here, the outside cells, so they don't overdo it. So Stanley, remind us of the current situation right now about bacteria adaptability and drug resistance.
Antibiotic resistance is becoming such a major problem throughout the U.S. It's about a $55 billion problem a year, and in the United States about 23,000 people a year die of these infections. In some cases, there's no antibiotic you can use to treat people.
So these colonies have been adapting, as Gural was saying, but you've actually had personal experience with this, correct?
Well, yes. Recently, I cut my leg pretty severely, developed an infection because it was in a part of my leg where antibiotics couldn't permeate from oral antibiotics. I was actually in the hospital for about 4 days and went through a course of 9 different antibiotics before the right antibiotic could be found.
The right one meaning that the bacteria hadn't adapted to it,
right.
Yet. How could these new findings on bacteria change things? I'll start with you, Stanley.
Well, what we desperately need are some new clever approaches to prevent these kinds of infections. And what we've been doing is more of the same over and over again. And so I think these findings are going to give us new ways at looking at the bacteria that will allow us to develop new types of approaches.
So new types of approaches being drugs. But Gural, you've also said that the bacteria behavior that you observed could be a teaching moment for humans in our society. How could that work out?
Well, because we also live in a society. And just like the bacteria, we have cooperation, so we can help each other in the bacterial community. The outer cells protect the interior cells, so that's cooperation. But at the same time, all the bacteria compete for food. And we, as a human society, also cooperate. But the people that we're cooperating with, sometimes we compete for them. Maybe we need to, fight over a parking spot at the supermarket or something. And so if we can figure out a way to resolve our social conflicts, just like the bacteria appear to be doing, it seems that we could also benefit as a community as a whole and be more prosperous.
And just going on that a little bit, Stanley, so how about in medicine? Is this a very exciting development?
Oh, I think it's a very exciting development. I think this is the kind of thing where these basic discoveries will lead to opportunities in the biotech industry in San Diego that ultimately could lead to new types of drugs.
All right, very exciting. Now I want to let folks know to see the bacteria behavior research study. It's been published online today in the journal Nature, so they can go to kpbs.org. Researcher Gural Suel and Professor Stanley Malloy, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next NewsHour, we meet a Nazi hunter and talk with a former concentration camp guard he's trying to put behind bars. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
A Spanish galleon ship on the move following 4 years of construction and thousands of volunteer hours. KPBS video journalist Katie Shulov has been covering the reconstruction of the San Salvador. She shows us what's left before they break out the champagne.
Despite challenges and delays, the San Salvador is officially no longer landlocked. The nearly 200-ton ship was loaded onto a barge and sent floating toward a temporary docking point at Marine Group Boatworks shipyard in Chula Vista. There, it will undergo a few more days of construction and then hit the water for the first time. Maritime Museum employees and 400 volunteers have spent the past 4 years reconstructing the first ship to sail into San Diego Bay in 1542. Volunteer Router Roy Libby put in 1,800 hours of labor.
It's sort of like having a brand new baby that was just born and then giving it to the nurse and she takes it away to another room. You go, I don't want that baby out of my sight.
More than 1 million visitors came to watch the construction at Spanish Landing Park, but Maritime Museum President Ray Ashley says the site presented challenges.
We built the ship in a parking lot, not a boatyard. So getting the ship into the water is not an easily done thing, and it's got to be done in stages. So this may be one of the slowest ship launches in history.
Ashley hopes the ship will make its official debut by sailing into the bay on the first day of the Festival of Sail in September. Katie Shulev, KPBS News.
Nice weather for a little sailing, feeling warm out there in San Diego, and it should stay dry. We'll see the morning overcast clearing back along the coast, temperatures in the 70s. 70s and 80s for the inland valleys, clearing in the mountain areas with temperatures in the 70s and 80s as well. And back to the triple digits for the desert. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom on Midday Edition. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer joins us with the latest challenges to keep the Chargers in town. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.